Tuesday. Now, agenda setting has become a universal practice for either new administrations or existing ones, with suggestions on policy direction and approaches to developmental growth. Now, the Tinubu administration, inaugurated on the 29th of May 2023, is not an exception to this theory, as it seeks to succeed in achieving its goals. Tonight, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's inaugural speech comes under the scrutiny of experts. But before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report put together by correspondent Ebola Brookslyn Sunday.
Development and the return of commodity exchange boards and the promotion of government-backed housing programs, analysts say, are important measures that could help to reposition the nation's economy.
Our administration will govern you only on your behalf, but never rule over you.
A national industrial policy to foster the development of strategic industries geared towards job creation, as well as poor, sustainable economic growth, are contained in President Bola Tinubu's proposal.
We continue with implementing the national strategy on public service reforms that is almost similar to the agenda of this government: fighting corruption, reducing unemployment, providing employment opportunities for the youth, improving our human capital index, improving our GDP, strengthening the federating units.
In the short term, there is going to be liquidity. There is an effort now to ensure that the country has some liquid. That means that we have some funds, we have some money, we have some revenues that we can be able to take care of quick wins like maybe MSMEs and maybe the social intervention programs too, and the rest of them, to at least keep the country calm.
However, for a troubled economy, how beneficial will the removal of fuel subsidy be to citizens?
Subsidy decision was okay, but he didn't make it at the right time. This is not the right time they were supposed to take this.
What I see is that the current president is the only person who has the courage to remove that subsidy once and for all, so that everybody can rest, so that he can be able to fund the economy.
And then you look at the drive that the government is also going with, vis-a-vis even their conversations with the labor and all of the things that they've agreed to do consequent upon the removal of the fuel subsidy, then you are sure to be optimistic that the industrial revolution is nearer than it has ever been in this country.
Another area of interest is the need to develop a tax credit policy and subsidies that insulates critical sectors from the negative impacts of imports.
We're hoping that the new governors that are coming in will use the opportunity that we have, the induction program that we're going to do with them, to get them to understand why they should reform their public services. So we'll be able to see functioning local government and a well-functioning state government, well-reformed, and then there will be less pressure on the central.
Epileptic electricity supply is perhaps the single greatest impediment to the country's economic advancements.
Recall that the immediate past president has already signed into law decentralization of generation of electricity. So that means that states now, or even private individuals, can be able to generate electricity. So that sector has maybe to a large extent already been liberalized. There will be a lot of influx into the market of the electricity generation. And then by that time also would have started to attain stability.
Now the private company that they privatize electricity to, if the one that are not performing, please remove them out of there and then employ new ones. There are many people on board who want to work with him. And we, Nigerians, we are ready to support this man 100%. I will pray for him.
President Tinubu says government-backed home mortgage system must be re-engineered, stating that mortgage loan agencies must be better funded and should liberalize their eligibility requirements so that more Nigerians could qualify for them.
If government can go ahead of development beyond just designing layout, be proactive enough to provide necessary basic infrastructure and also be on ground to implement, all these layouts in these other locations like the satellite towns, where the plots are even a bit cheaper, I believe people will still drift that direction.
Observers say the nation's economy cannot grow beyond the capacity of the infrastructure which serves it, and government must take the lead in this regard. Adebola, Brooklyn Sunday.
That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. I'd like to start off by introducing our guests. Let me welcome to this program Nia Kinshiju, who is an investment expert. Thanks for being with us tonight.
It's a pleasure and a privilege. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Let me also welcome to this program Dr. Obinna Iberim, who is a public health physician, a political strategist, and a public affairs analyst. Thanks for being here tonight.
It's my pleasure.
All right. We're also joined tonight by Umar Babakanu. He is the National Secretary of IPMAN, that's the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let me also introduce Dr. Mainasara Umar Kogo, lawyer, international affairs analyst. Thanks for being here.
It's always my honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And here we are also tonight with Professor Uche Uwaleke. He's a professor of capital market. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So, at some point during the program, we will open our phone lines and you can be part of the discussion in the studio. But that will be much later. And when it's that time, we'll refresh your memories on the procedure and how it will work out. But for now, let's begin to look at the issues. It's a new president in town, and as we said to you, his inaugural speech provides quite a number of talking points as we begin the process of agenda setting. Let's start off with Professor Uche Uwaleke. What are your impressions and your opinion of the president's inaugural speech?
Thanks, Cyril. The president gave the impression of somebody who is ready and willing to hit the ground running from day one. And so in that inaugural speech, he said a few right things that excited the investing community, that excited the markets in particular. You realized that the following day after the inaugural speech, the stock market gained 5.23%. And even our sovereign bond, the Euro bond, also rallied. I also recall that even the Naira exchange rate, dropped. At least in the parallel market, it dropped from 780 to 770. On account of some of the things he said in that inaugural address, namely the fact that he wants to see a unified exchange rate. And of course, you know what that means for, capital inflows into the country. Where you have a unified exchange rate, that brings about more transparency, reduces round tripping, and boosts investors' confidence. So the market was excited, with that comment. The comment also about, dealing with multiple taxes, multiple taxation, and also ensuring that investors again don't face encumbrances when they are repatriating their dividends. So I think all of that, these ones in particular, resulted in what we saw the following day. So I think overall, I would say yes. These statements, in my view, were expected by the particularly the organized private sector. But the one I have reservation for has to do with the comment that on that particular day, that fuel subsidy, was gone. Okay. Even though he was stating the obvious, but in my view, that wouldn't have come on that particular day, because of course we saw the reaction almost immediately. Queues, people started hoarding, and so on. So that announcement effect, had some negative consequences on the economy. But overall, I would say much of the speech, they were positive.
Okay, fantastic. We'll look at it in greater detail as we go on. But let's get to Nasara, who would give us his perspective on the agenda that the president seemed to have set with his inaugural address to the nation.
Yes, philosophically speaking, no nation develops higher than the tempo of the spirit, vision, and mission of its leadership. The statement by President Bola Tinubu is a quintessential disposition of highest level of statesmanship, because he really portrays the fact that he knows the problems at hand. And one remarkable thing that you must appreciate in the president's speech is he never said I. The doctrine of collectivism in leadership was what he portrayed. He said, our government. Our government will never rule over you, but will govern. In other words, he understands the enormity of the challenges that are waiting for him. Constitutionally speaking, when you take section 130, it says that the president is the chief executive officer of the federal government, or the federation, which means the federal, the state, and the local government, and is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He really decided to pick that one square and clear by saying that, calling on all people to come on board, whether you are for him or you are against him. He embraced everybody and said that the task of nation building is a collective phenomenon. It's something that everybody should come on board to partake. And he said that the era of political coloration or political differences is over. And apart from that, he went about and said one fundamental thing that is required for anybody that is trying to lead Nigeria, that the unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable, that so long the world exists, Nigeria remains united, which is in tandem with section 15, subsection 1, the motto of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. What we need now more than ever before is national unity, national cohesion. Secondly, the issue of security. He said it will receive frontal concern under his administration. And then he now talked about the need for him to select the best materials, the teams to work with. When you take the provisions of the Constitution under sections 147, 150, 214 to 216, 153, and so many other provisions, he had the avalanche of picking the finest lieutenants that should work for him, bearing in mind his earlier decision that we, in other words, it is not the humongous responsibility of him alone. Therefore, he now decided to set the ball rolling by calling for teamwork, for collectivism, in order to solve the myriad of problems confronting Nigeria.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll look at that in greater detail, especially a lot from the Constitution and what that portends for the administration as it moves forward. But let's come to Umar Babakanu, IPMAN National Secretary.
Thank you.
How did you rate the president's inaugural speech?
Yeah, the president's inaugural speech was impressive because he sounds very, generally confident of what he is saying. As Prof said, he knows what exactly the problem we are facing. But as what the other professor said, from my own constituents, that the oil subsidy regime is gone. So it's the best thing that can happen to this country, because so many things have been happening under that regime. But I think so many things need to be done before then. even though, sometimes you need to take the bull by the horn, because so many past governments have been saying subsidy will be removed and the rest, but it has never been done. So I think maybe he decided maybe just to take it from there, but I don't think it is the right time to start it, even though, as I said, maybe he just took it right from the word go in order to avoid any further delay. But I think so many things need to be put in place. First of all, in terms of our refineries, even though I'm happy, did not hear it directly from him or maybe from his media assistants and whatsoever. He said some of the refineries must be up and doing before the end of the year, which might be possible, but very hard. Because we have been hearing about this. It has even become a story. Every day, day in, day out, they'll tell you the refineries will start working. If you can hear what was spent on these refineries within this short period of time, you'll be amazed. Hardly people like us who are within the peripheries of the industry will tell you authoritatively, in short, even most of those people that are within the industry. So, but I think, which we hope from the way we see him talking and from what we expect of him, we hope this time around it may be different. But all fingers are crossed. Let's see how it goes.
All right. Well, I would have been surprised if you didn't start off your comments with that one issue. It's about the only thing the biggest thing that's been discussed, but we'll come to that in greater detail. Let's hear from Dr. Rubin Evirim. And still the same thing. The president read out his speech. He indicated in which direction he would want to go. How did that sit with you as a citizen?
So I would speak as a citizen, as a young person, as someone in the health sector. So I would say that the speech came to me and people in my demography. It was exciting. It was reassuring, but not surprising for some of us who are, I would say, students of the Tinubu style of government, because we have seen him do similar things. So when he was speaking, he exuded that confidence of a leader, right, that we campaigned upon. And he showed that he knew the problems, right? And he had specific solutions, right? And as a young person, I was happy to hear that he was going to work for us and with us, right? In the past, we've had situations where it's working for us without even knowing what we want. But when you say you work with us, it means that you're including us, and we'll be on the table to highlight some of those things that matter to us as young people. And going forward, he was able to articulate some of those things. So issues of creating jobs. And he didn't just make an open or a verbal statement, I will create jobs. He went on to say how he would ensure strengthen the agricultural sector to ensure greater production in agro industries, create jobs, the digital economy, right? And it's also, when you listen to that speech, you will see its alignment with what is included in the renewed hope document that he campaigned upon, right? And that also reassures me as someone in the health sector, because if you then go back to that document, and because it was time-based, so he was able to articulate everything. But when you see some of those things in the document being repeated in that speech, it reassures you that the renewed hope agenda will be implemented. And it talks some exciting things around the health sector, the need to strengthen the primary and secondary health care, which is closer to the people, the need to ensure that we are now producing more of the vaccines and drugs and not depending on import, which would in turn create jobs and also reduce a lot of dependence on the foreign exchange, and the need to also ensure that we are focusing on preventive care, reducing the maternal child mortality rate in this country, strengthening the health workforce, right? Not only just employing, but making sure we are training, and also dealing with issues of health security to ensure that when next a pandemic comes, right, we are well prepared. So for me, that speech was reassuring, it was exciting, but I'm not surprised because I know the man, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu.
All right, thank you so much. And now from the investment expert, who most probably would tell us what those who are looking to invest in Nigeria and who have been skeptical about what's happening in the country, would they feel reassured? Would they put their money on this country listening to the president speak?
Yeah, thank you. I think Prof had actually given us a direction on that. But allow me first to actually look at the whole gamut of that speech, because to me, it's you can actually stratify, the speech as it were into different perspectives, in terms of ideology, in terms of philosophical undercurrents, and of course, again, in terms of the economy, the normals, as it were. But what struck me was that for the first time, we actually have a president, during his inauguration speech, talk to an ideology, the Nigerian, what he described as the Nigerian ideal. Because in talking to what he wanted to do, he said, let us even forget the economics and all those things. That there is a need for us to understand what the Nigerian ideal is all about. And it is about nurturing our humanity through compassion for each other. And when I heard that, it really struck me. Because what exactly is the basis of all agitations and interactions and all manners of crisis, that characterize the Nigerian nation over time? Principally because despite the fact that we understand our challenges and our potentials, we just determined to take divided positions, driven by fault lines that we imagine and fabricated over time. So this person has now told us for the first time, it's not even just about the unity of Nigeria, but there's an ideal that the average Nigerian should drive at, and that is first understand our mutual humanity, and then compassion for each other across political and geographical divides, and to understand that seeking the good of a northerner, for instance, in the north, is not enough. That if you are seeking your own good, you must also pursue the good of the other person on the other side of the divide. Yeah. It provides a major platform, for the Nigerian vision to evolve. And so when you have that platform, you can build every other thing on it without distraction. So we have been talking about policies and programs in Nigeria, and everybody by consensus over the past 20, 30 years that have been following policies, I'd agree that we have robust policies, but that the only problem is that implementation. It is the Nigerian ideal, the lacking of that Nigerian vision, shared by the commonality of every Nigerian, that has been the challenge. So it means that we have a president now that understands the core, of what should unify us. Let Nigerians know that we cannot just be individual within our space. We must also consider the other parties, and that is what will be the engine that will drive us forward. So I feel honored, when I heard and also read that. So this is the superstructure on which all these other programs and policies will be built on. So if we are not talking about subsidy, for instance, it is in consideration of the Nigerian ideal. If we are talking about agriculture, it is a realization of the Nigerian ideal. And the simple thing about the agriculture thing talks, of course, we've had challenges with food security. We have large expanse of fertile land. Why over the years have we not been able to feed ourselves appropriately? Perhaps until the last administration, there had not been any deliberate plan, any deliberate policy to drive food security. So we can see some manner of growth and development along that line. But specifically, this president is now telling us that one of the major problems in our agricultural value chain is storage. And everybody who had followed agricultural economy we will agree that the biggest problem we have is post-harvest waste. So he has been able to pinpoint that in his inauguration speech. So I know that immediately work would set off, to provide storage. And in doing that, you create another value chain of economic activities along that line. Now, talking about investments, once you are able to unify the exchange rates, investors, of course, know that there's certainty within the economy. The first problem with an average investor is not being able to project what will be the outcome of his decision, of his or her decision. So if there is a certainty of the fact that if I take $100 into this economy, when you have valued, the average investor is valuing that economy, is it 100 naira, is it $100 that I take there? The kind of transactions I'm going to be involved with, am I doing it at value to my $100? So why most investors that refuse to come into Nigeria is that they believe that the naira is overvalued, one. And that, of course, when you even invest, to take it out of the economy is also difficult. So they hold on to whatever they have. So now, if you have a unified exchange, one, they know that you are coming at this rate to this rate. And when you bring it in, you are also to take it out at this rate to that rate. And the advantage really is that where we have had challenges with currency import over the last so many years, is that most investors, even those who are portfolio investors, those we call Abujas of hot money, they are not willing to bring in their money because of the certainty of the value they are going to get for it and when they are going to exit. That is one. Then two, Prof. And of course the Ipman man said subsidy perhaps is not the appropriate time. Okay. I also realized actually that subsidy is gone was not part of the speech. So you can only imagine the subsidy, the aspect of subsidy, the analysis of subsidy was part of the speech. But subsidy is gone. That line was not part of the speech. So it shows you the emotions, that drove the delivery of that aspect of the speech. And that no matter what, this for him was a major item on the agenda going forward, And for some of us, I would say that the debate around subsidy had never subsided since 2016. It had been a recurring issue in the public space, either at the political level or at the economic level, since 2016. So it is not as if there was a break and that there was a need now to start recalibrating it. No. Every issue around fuel subsidy has been debated in the Nigerian public space in the last 8 years, thoroughly and robustly. So much that even all the major actors are tired of themselves. So we needed a president, that will say, look, this is the way forward. Let's from day one. Let this scatter, let it start. And then we'll start finding a middle road for ourselves, as we proceed.
Okay. We'll see how that works out as we explore other parts of the speech. But apart from the studio discussion, as we told you, we have a number of reports still coming from all over the country. So now we'll take the first of those reports. This one is from Lagos.
Dawn for the country and her citizens, especially a place like Lagos, the commercial nerve of the nation's economy, believed to contribute about 30% to the nation's GDP. The new administration has commenced work in earnest It is therefore very pertinent for a city like Lagos, which by design and its unique characteristics houses critical infrastructure such as the Apapa and Lekki deep sea ports, Dangote refinery, rail transportation, among other industries and commercial activities necessary for revenue generation and considered indispensable to the economic growth of the country. Some Lagosians suggest areas of concentration for the government to boost economic sustainability.
I would like the new government to focus on price control. There is a lot of price differentials in the country in different sectors. Two, in terms of ICT, give some kind of incentive for the youth.
Of course, medical as well, health, this providing health insurance, affordable medical for both the privileged and the unprivileged as well.
We are hoping that the government can do something, a lot of intervention in such a way that the citizens are going to have a good time.
In addition to having a safe and unified front and subsidy removal, experts also lend their voices, stating that considering the huge debt profile of the nation, there is need for government to take necessary advantage of potentials in Lagos by blocking all leakages and other illicit financial flows, ensure the ease of doing business, and deepen investment opportunities.
When we build residential, everyone needs a place to live. Everyone needs a place to work. Increasingly, it's their house, and people need houses.
And so, without electricity, there is no thriving economy.
I think it's legacy. What do you want as a government? What do you want to be remembered by? So, and the only way you can do that is making the right appointments.
As the saying goes, Rome was not built in a day. Experts also believe that the path to economic recovery has begun, and matching words with action will translate to a vibrant future for Nigeria and her citizens. In Lagos, Amaka O.
All right, that report from Lagos, and we have other reports as well. And the next one is from Kano.
Elections have come and gone, and a new government is now sworn in to steer the affairs of the country. These observers, however, believe is a Herculean task that needs strong policies to be enacted and reformative strategies to be put in place to bring back to shape a stronger system and a more economically viable Nigeria. The task ahead is indeed not an easy one for the incumbent governments at all levels, as they begin to put into action their already set agendas and bring on board a strong team of persons to fill strategic positions in government in order to tackle some of the economic challenges bedeviling the nation.
The new government has to find a way to sort out so many problems this country faces, especially on the economic side. And we expect to see some evidence of professionalism in those who be appointed.
When you want to take corrective measures, you follow channels. People are aware that some of the things we are doing need legal backing. Some of them need policy backing. Some of them need administrative backing. And you have yet put an administration in place. So you don't have that backing. So it becomes a one-man show. There is a need for continuity in government policies and programs.
These analysts believe that despite the numerous challenges bedeviling the country, nation building must take the front seat, and all hands must be on deck, regardless of political affiliation, as all Nigerians begin to look beyond societal differences and together tap into the strength inherent in the nation's diversity towards building a new nation. In Kano, Elizabeth Ila.
Two huge economic hubs, and of course the speech dwelt to some extent, to a reasonable extent, on how the president intends to drive the economy. Now, two things I want you to look at here. He talks about job creation, economic growth and development, and the matter of a unified exchange. There's been a lot of debate about merits, demerits, how possible
Cyril. Before I touch on what you asked me, permit me to go back to what I started saying, that the president's speech elicited some positive reactions, and the public, the investment public, are also watching to see whether the positive vibes, if you like, coming from the president, whether they are sustainable. If you cast your mind back to when former president came to office, as soon as he was announced the winner in March, I recall, and the president, former president Goodluck Jonathan, called to him, congratulating him, we saw that kind of reaction. The market, shut up. At that time, it was described as the Bullhari effect. Bullhari effect. B-U-L-L. Harry effect. The market is bullish when prices are up. But that did not last. Okay. After a very short while, it fizzled out. It fizzled out because of the delay. For example, in appointing the cabinet, we didn't see any economic blueprint of the administration, not until 2007. So some of these, comments also led to the market, going down. As a matter of fact, after the first 1 year, the market lost, trillions of naira. So now back to this administration. What has happened to has been rightly described as the Tinubu effect. The Tinubu effect. With the bullish. With the Tinubu effect. So we are also expecting that this effect, is sustained. If you watch what has happened in the last 1 week, the market has been up. Okay, it's just on Monday that we saw a little slight drop. But again, today the market is also up. So for this confidence to be sustained, he needs to sustain this sort of action. And for me, one of the things he also needs to do, because as I said, people are watching, the spirit of what we're talking about, the national ideal, he should ensure that his cabinet is a rainbow cabinet. And I'm happy that he has even hinted at the idea of forming government of national unity. So he should invest from wherever he can get them, and also ensuring that, just as he said in his speech, although that's also in his manifesto, that he's going to run a very unique government, as part of measures again to pursue fiscal consolidation. In other words, reduce budget deficit, to the point where government revenues now match spending. So he has to do that by ensuring that the size of the government is not too large. Okay, so the appointing the right persons, that's key. And also, what I would also suggest, that is also the time for us to see the blueprint that is working on. Now, we have the National Development Plan already in place. If the Tinubu's administration, the blueprint is going to work with, is it going to be different from the National Development Plan? Because we already have 2021 to 2025 National Development Plan. So we need to know whether that is the plan upon which is still going to work, or whether there is a blueprint that would depart from that plan. But I would suggest, for purpose of continuity, that plan should be relevant for the administration. Now, with respect to the monetary policy, let me say, very clearly that yes, it is the primary responsibility of the central bank to maintain price stability, to tackle inflation. Of course, part of the price also includes exchange rate and interest rate, and inflation. But there are factors, a lot of factors that are outside the control of the central bank, which is also making it difficult for the central bank to rein in inflation. Many of the factors today that are driving inflation in our country are cost push, they are supply side, and those are factors that are more or less the domain of the fiscal authority. Now, regarding the exchange rate, it's not something the central bank can also do by fiat. Of course, doing it by fiat means you are devaluing. If the impression is out there that Naira is overvalued,
we've seen this happen in Nigeria's history, fixing those rate by fiat.
Yes.
And of course, if you do recall, just last week there were speculations that the central bank had devalued Naira, only for a statement come from the Apex Bank that no such thing had happened.
Yes, right. Yes. The reality of the matter is that even if the central bank devalues today, as long as we have not diversified our export base, as long as 90% of our forex still comes from the sale of crude oil, we will continue to devalue. Devaluation will have no end. So if you devalue from 460 to 630, for example, the current market rate may want to converge, but after a while, it will also move away from that new rate. So until we are in a situation to earn more forex, which of course I'm sure is one of the cardinal things that the administration wants to do. Once we're able to earn more forex, then we're in a position to support the value of the naira. The unification of exchange rate, in my view, just as I'm also arguing with respect to fuel subsidy, it will not happen overnight. It's not going to be an event. It is going to be something that will be planned. There should be a program for unification of exchange rate, just as I argue that there should also be a program for complete removal of subsidy. You don't remove fuel subsidy all in one fell swoop. What we are experiencing now is what has been described as the sudden death approach, where you jack it off in one fell swoop by over 180%. Okay, it's going to cause a lot of distortion in the economy, but it can be faced. I'm not saying it should be faced forever, but it can be faced in such a way that the effects on the economy, okay, will be minimized. There is no doubt about that if this situation continues, we are going to have galloping inflation. Okay, if you remove subsidy today, all of a sudden, at the same time, you're also unifying exchange rate. When you have these reforms all coming at once, okay, it is going to cause a lot of distortion in the economy. So, in my view, I would suggest that the government should continue this engagement it is having with all the stakeholders, with a view to coming up with a practical way of removing fuel subsidy. And in my view, in phases. And while you are now phasing out fuel subsidy, you will seize the opportunity to put in place compensation measures. Instead, there must be things that must be in place before you remove subsidy. Yes, I agree. So those things can now be gradually put in place while you are removing fuel subsidy. Again, for unification of exchange rate, there has to be a program, there has to be a plan. It don't happen overnight.
I think I just want to react a bit here. I think the situation about this subsidy removal, it's an inherited policy, right? There is no fuel subsidy at the moment. So I think that, for me, in my opinion, I would agree with the second part of this intervention, which is how do we mitigate the effects, right? Because you have a situation whereby government is, you continue with the former administration. Now there is no subsidy in the budget. The question is, do you then go and look for where to borrow money and phase out and then introduce maybe a 50% subsidy, right? But in my opinion, I think that you inherited a government where there is no subsidy in the budget. What I think should be done is not to reintroduce maybe 50% to have a stepwise approach, but then how do we manage the effects? How do we ensure that we have maybe a short to medium term public transportation service to take care, right? How do we have to provide maybe vouchers for maybe the poor? So I think that it might be, in my opinion, an argument, I don't know it all, but I think in my opinion, I think that since the last administration has removed the subsidy, it's not in the budget, we should focus now about managing the effects so that the common man in the streets, right, does not feel the full brunt of that fuel subsidy removal. That has happened before this administration, not by this administration.
Well, sorry if you don't mind.
Okay, yes.
A major recommendation on the table today, even by the labor unions, by TUC in particular, is that minimum wage should increase. So, at least 200,000, and that is what labor is saying. But I also think that it is not about increasing minimum wage. When you say minimum wage, who are the people that will benefit from minimum wage? Government, those who work civil servants. And how many are there?
Of course, I'm saying that even at the current minimum wage,
not every state
we still know that many states, and I can say that authoritatively, many states are still struggling to pay. And I know some states where workers have not been paid for about 5 months.
You are talking about states. What about the organized sector? Okay, where you have a majority of people working. So it's beyond the minimum wage thing.
All right. Deal with the economic issues and have growth. But again, in the same speech, he talks about why Nigeria has to remain. Okay. If you do not have a Nigeria, then you can't even begin to talk about economic growth.
Yes, that is the fundamental. Because you must have a foundation to build any structure on. National unity is non-negotiable. As a matter of fact, all the presidents, right from the first president in 1960 to date, they are maintaining their stand on this pedestal that unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable. We saw how in Nigeria we experienced 30 months of useless war. I call it useless war because at the end of 30 months we lost over 3 million people, and at the end we still embrace ourselves as no winner, no vanquished. So unity is very, very critical, and I really appreciate his disposition of bringing it in his presidential speech, because never in the history of Nigeria was election processes conducted on the altar of primordial sentiments in the one of 2023. It is therefore very, very important for him to bring the nation back to the drawing board, because doing anything contrary to national unity, whether you call it zoning, whether you call it sectional, whether you call it tribal or whatever, is absolutely contrary to the various provisions of the Constitution. Section 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 23, and 24 of the Constitution prohibits any activity of governance on the basis of either tribe, on the basis of either religion, on the basis of sexual consideration, on the basis of class, on the basis of sex, on the basis of any other thing. Therefore, it's very, very important for him to bring this thing very, very well as a matter of caution for whosoever. But for him to do that, he has to be sure that the lieutenants he will understand are those that believe in this spirit. Because when you appoint somebody, he thinks he is a minister of so section or so states. That is an anathema to the Constitution of Abuja. The office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation has actually a challenge on this. It is not the office of the Secretary to the Federal Government. Greater of those occupants of the office treat it as office of the Secretary to the Federal Government. It is not. It is government of the Federation. When President Babangida changed this in the year 1985, he clearly meant that the components of the federal, the states, the local governments, and some critical sectors that are non-governmental must be taken into cognizance when you are thinking about policy evolutions, policy implementations, policy programs, and this. So that whatever programs you will bring at the top of the federal level, it should be able to easily cascade down for the ultimate benefit of the common man, bearing in mind Section 14 subsection 1 that says sovereignty belongs to the people. So that at the end of it will be otherwise, whatever you do, if you don't tailor your programs in harmony with these structures, you will end up building a cascade in the air. Because at the end of it, it is the common men, the custodians of the local government, the state government, and those other non-governmental bodies that are closer to the common man. Therefore, one of the things you should quickly do is to try to really see that people that are statesmen of highest pedigree are the ones he is picking to be in his cabinet. recycling old materials. These old materials, greater number of them, we are accusing them as being the midwives or the myriad of problems we are facing now. So you have to get people that are essential statesmen, people that are thinking beyond their tribe, beyond their religion, beyond their culture, beyond their political zones. You have to get people that really know the definition of leadership, that really takes leadership as an instrument of trust, that really see themselves as vicegerents of the Holy vicegerents of God Almighty, so that they will come here and represent God and transcend natural justice for all and sundry, whatever is your own geopolitical, religious, tribal, or any other sentimental consideration. He has to think of it beyond that, and he has to go beyond politicians, because a politician is not necessarily a statesman. An average politician's interest is how to win power, how to perpetuate himself in power, and how to install somebody who will be his robot when he leaves office. A statesman is somebody that looks at the totality of 117 million Nigerians as he is somebody who is their laborer, who is their slave, whom he believes they will be accountable for the way he the stewardship of government with them. He should be somebody who should show the light on which the nation's developmental tempo will be predicated of. So he has to really think about it, for example, and he has to go beyond the issue of the current problems. As a leader, he has to think deep. We are not talking about petroleum. We are not talking about taxes. How about the abundance of the solid minerals we are having? What are his strategies regarding how to extract them, how to establish refineries for petrol, for gold, for example, for diamond, for cotton white, for all those minerals, how to now attract foreign direct investments, and how to market these fortunes, and at the same time, how to build a system of commonwealth whereby every other person will see himself as a beneficial owner of treasures of the commonwealth that Nigeria is proud to have. He has to go beyond the issue of seeing politicians or looking for politicians or people that are having political affiliations or whatever. He has to think of real laborers of the country, real statesmen that are prepared to work as laborers with the ultimate belief that when they died, Almighty God will give them what? Not some people that are looking for monetary or financial or whatever type of gains here. We have seen people among the politicians that have come to Abuja in taxis, and they are prestigious owners of private jets now. We have seen people that have come to Abuja as squatting in Professor Eweke or Niki's house, and then they are prestigious owners of big mansions in Maitama and so forth. So those are the type of people in the presidential, yes, with the intelligence agencies to be able to know what are the details about this man. And then when you identify him, you want him to work with you, ask him to sit down before you without allowing him to go out. Write me a blueprint on how you will turn this ministry into excellence period of 3 to 4 months. If he cannot do it, delete his name. If he wants to go and consult somebody, he wants to go and get a consultant that will prepare excellent AC for him, let him write what he will do in office within a period of 3 to 4 months, and when you appoint him, give it the responsibility of the secretary to the government of the federation to really give them marching orders, to really be inspecting them periodically to be sure that those things that have been targeted for him are the things he is entrenching, so that at the end of it, you don't need to keep them for 8 years without changing them. Anybody that didn't pass the tempo of the yardstick of statesmanship you are desiring, put him out and get competent, sophisticated, talented materials of world standard come in your cabinet.
Well, that's so if we have to look at what the immediate short-term and long-term mitigating factors for the current situation, you look at the president and say, well, this is how to go. If we go with Dr. Ibirim, he says, subsidy, well, it's a non-deal. So what we should be looking at is how to mitigate the effects in the medium and long term.
Cyril, the thing is that removal of subsidy is the best thing that can happen to this country. As you know, it has been said that nearly 400 billion is being subsidized monthly. Imagine what 400 billion will do to this country in terms of agriculture, health, education, whatsoever.
Across the board is. It's not the first time Nigerians have heard about.
Thank you. That's why I'm going. That's why I'm going.
So why?
That's why I'm going.
Why should Nigeria
I told you earlier, we hope and pray this time around we get it right. Maybe this time around is different from what we have been hearing. Because as I told you earlier, it's just a story that every time, okay, we remove the thing that we have been subsidizing this product since 1970s or maybe since, what's happening here is that the immediate maybe solutions to this, or maybe the way I see him sounding confident, and there are some things just like what my brother here is saying. There are ways of doing things. Like now, the immediate solutions to get attention now, and maybe if anything happens, maybe like this, the last year's Ukrainian problem, petrol will rise to more than 1,000. How do you tackle it? The thing is that you must have to be, independent in terms of refining capacity. There are so many ways of doing that, just as we said. Fine. Very limited wants to come and establish a modular refinery. Just 1,000 barrels. If you have them maybe 20 to 50 in this country, which is the most easiest thing to do if at all we have a level playing ground. Do your work plan. The first 1 month, 1,000 or even a 5,000 modular refinery can be put in place within 6 months to highest. You can get so many people, maybe 50. I can name 10, 20, 30 companies that I know that can put them within the span of 6 months. The work program is that the first 1 month we can get to 10% level, second month 20%, whatever. Get the work plan. If at all he fails the first target, the second target, that means he cannot be able to do. You put people that are capable and that can do it, and they are there. So if at all we doesn't have these things on ground, that is why, as I said, the best thing that can happen to us is to remove subsidy. But so many things have to be put in place, especially in terms within the industry. Because generally, if you see the way things are going, like now, as he said, if you doesn't have, new people, people that are reliable, who knows what they are doing, we are going back to square one. Of which we don't pray because we have already gotten exhausted. Everybody is tired of all this.
All right. Well, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, the phone lines will be open. That means that you can join in the discussion in the studio. Stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
To continuously promote best practices and competencies in public procurement, Association of Public Procurement Practitioners of Nigeria, APPN, is set to host a third annual national conference, induction and award ceremony, ECO 2023, with the theme Implementation of E-Procurement in Nigeria, Prospects and Challenges. Date 8th of June 2023. Venue Radisson Blue Hotel, Ikeja, Lagos State. Time 10 a.m. Special guest of honor, His Excellency Babajide Sanwo-Olu, Executive Governor of Lagos State. Keynote speaker, Engineer Dr. Femilayo Wahid Adekoju, Mamman Maju, Director General, Bureau of Public Procurement, Chief Host, Kaniko, National President, Host, Nora Sani, Chairman, Central Planning Committee. For advertisement and participation, please call 0803-599-9028, Association of Public Procurement Practitioners of Nigeria, promoting transparency and professionalism in public procurement.
Tuesday Live, network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
The development of a national infrastructure plan, the return of commodity exchange boards, and the promotion of government-backed housing programs, analysts say, are important measures that could help to reposition the nation's economy.
Our administration will govern you
national industrial policy to foster the development of strategic industries geared towards job creation as well as poor, sustainable economic growth are contained in President Bola Tinubu's proposal.
Continue with implementing the national strategy on public service reforms that is almost similar to the agenda of this government: fighting corruption, providing employment opportunities for the youth, improving our human capital index, improving our GDP, strengthening the federation unit.
In the short term, there is going to be liquidity. There is an effort now to ensure that the country has some liquid. That means that we have some funds, we have some money, we have some revenues that we can be able to take care of things like maybe MSMEs and maybe the social intervention programs too, and the rest of them, to at least get to be the country calm.
However, for a troubled economy, how beneficial will the removal of fuel subsidy be to citizens?
Subsidy decision was okay, but he didn't make it at the right time. This is not the right time. He was supposed to take this.
What I see is that the current president is the only person who has the courage to remove that subsidy once and for all, so that everybody can rest, so that he can be able to fund the economy.
And then you look at the drive that the government is also going with, vis-a-vis even the conversations with Labour and all of the things that they've agreed to do, upon the removal of the fuel subsidy, then you're sure to be optimistic that industrial inclusion is nearer than it has ever been in this country.
Another area of interest is the need to develop a tax credit policy and subsidies that insulate critical sectors from negative impacts of imports.
We're hoping that the new governors that are coming in will use the opportunity that we have, the induction program that we're going to do with them together, to understand why they should reform their public services. So we'll be able to see functioning local government and a well-functioning state government, well-reformed, and then there'll be less pressure on the central.
Epileptic electricity supply is perhaps the single greatest impediment to the country's economic advancement.
Recall that the immediate president has already signed into law decentralization of generation of electricity. So that means that states now or even private individuals can be able to generate electricity. So that sector has maybe to a large extent already been liberalized. Maybe a lot of influx into the market of the electricity generation. And then by that time also would have started to attain stability.
Now the private company that privatized this, if they want to not performing, please remove them out of there and then employ the ones. There are many people on board who want to work with him. And we, Nigeria, are ready to support this man 100%. I will pray for him.
President Tinubu says government-backed home mortgage system must be re-engineered, stating that mortgage loan agencies must be better funded and should liberalize their eligibility requirements so that more Nigerians could qualify for them.
If government can go ahead of development beyond just designing layout, proactive enough to provide necessary basic infrastructure and also be on ground to implement, all these layouts in these other locations like satellite towns, where the plots are even a bit cheaper, I believe people will still drift that direction.
Observers say the nation's economy cannot grow beyond the capacity of the infrastructure which serves it, and government must take the lead in this regard. Adebola, Brooklyn Sunday.
Possible, as quickly as possible. Fantastic. The discussion has been going on behind the scenes. It just tells you how robust ideas are about here. Well, this part of the program is when you can get to join the discussion. The numbers will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of those numbers. Call in with a question or comment. We say this every Tuesday. If you're calling in tonight and your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor. Turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. We also encourage you not to spend too much time on greetings. Just a simple hello will do. Whatever issues you raise, our guests will be willing to take those issues, turn them around, and see how best to put them across. So keep those calls coming through. We have one other report. I think this one is from OCA. If we have our OCA report ready, we can get to see that.
The mission of the present administration being to improve the way of life in a manner that nurtures humanity, encourages compassion towards one another, and duly reward collective efforts to resolve the social ills that seek to divide the nation. Analysts say both the leaders and the led must work as a team to restructure all sectors of the economy to build and make the nation better and stronger.
Patriotism is all about considering the big and small, the low profile and high profile. If you do that, then once you carry everybody along, I think you will realize that.
It's only a leadership that has the will to change things. We know the problem. We know this country is sick, and we know the problem. But who will have the will to say enough is enough? Corruption headlong.
We are really patient and patriotic people. I think the new government that has come in place should, as a matter of urgency, speak to Nigerians and attend to the needs of Nigerians so that Nigeria will continue to exist and exist in peace.
Governance and task of nation building they maintain are usually influenced by four major factors: human resources, physical capital, natural resources, and technological advancement. Hence, the need for collective efforts to achieve the desired results the nations unborn will be proud of.
I want to plead with this government, please come and help the academic union of Nigerian universities. If they are able to do this, come on. The sky will be their limit.
Issue of rich quick syndrome. Why should people go to Central Bank of Nigeria and buy dollar at federal government rate, and immediately outside the CBN they sell it at prices? I think they call it dollar tripping or whatever they call it. There shouldn't be parallel for dollar.
The consensus is that with new government in place, national unity and integration should not be compromised as unity and oneness bring peace and progress. Enoka Chinyere Fesi Okoye.
It's already been done. All right, here back in the studio. Let's look at another. Many of these issues are interwoven actually, and talking about growing the economy and tackling so many of these issues. One big point here, which the president mentioned in the speech, has to do with power generation and distribution. It's been a long, winding way talking about development, that critical aspect. Power supply.
Yeah, well, there's no. We've had so much idealism around power generation and power supplies, up to the unbundling, of former NTA. But going forward, whatever has been a dream, the vision for infrastructure and power, energy, being part of that infrastructure, is still about funding. There had been this cement thing, that had been, I think it's still a gestation period. We are hoping that this year it will be realized, but it's still principally about funding. And that's why some of us are really in support of the removal of the subsidy. Because I always look at the fact that we are near bankruptcy state. Our problem over the last 8 years, I've been an advocate of the debt that accumulated, that have been channeled sincerely to infrastructural development and growth, which is needed especially for enablement of business and to grow the economy. But again, the reality has dawned on us too, that the last 6 or 7 years has been an equivalent of an economic war. Because starting from 2015, issues with earnings from crude oil, through to COVID-19 challenges and all that. then to the Russia-Ukraine war. All these, those 8 years can be docketed into a paradigm of its own, where there's constricted economic transactions and activities. But going forward, how do we unleash the potential that is still inherent in the Nigerian economy? Power being a major contributor. We don't have any problem with it. In fact, in the last 24 months, the federal government has delivered on 3 profound renewable power generation. There's the Kashimbila, I'm sorry, I've just forgotten. Kashimbila.
Mambila.
No, not Mambila. Kashimbila, Zungeru, you know, and another third one, totaling close to 1,000 megawatt of power, you know, delivered. The challenge had always been about transmission and distribution. But again, we know that it's still not enough. For us to have an average starting point to galvanize our industry in the most cost-effective manner would be that we have at least 10,000, you know, megawatt of power. Then at that level, we can know that we are distributing, we are transmitting and distributing to our industry, to power our industry. And it is not enough to power industry. You must also power households. Thankfully, the president said clearly that Nigeria will have access, he used the word access to power at cheap rates, affordable rates. I am believing that we have the platforms already. The country, before the Kashibila and Zungeru and the third one comes on stream, had a capacity for a probable 12,000 megawatts of power. The only problem had been transmitting that capacity to the end users, which had been limited to between 4,000 and 5,000 megawatts of power. If the transmission capacity is enhanced, I also know that over the last 36 months thereabouts, there have been a lot of efforts, you know, to increase that capacity. Now, fortunately, it's no longer going to be a federal government affair. The states, by amendment to the law, now have a right to generate. Not generate, because before they had power, local government even had power to generate up to 10 megawatt of power in a local government and distributes. But now, there is that open space. There's a democratization of that space for states to generate and distribute power. All right. I know that now we have there's going to start being a shift from the thermal, because over between 1998 and 2012 thereabout, there was that unholy concentration on thermal plants, forgetting that the base of the Nigerian power generation system was on hydrology, you know, and we started with Kenji Dam. We had a Shiroro. You know, for a long time, we didn't know anything about thermal until recently. Okay. And that is actually they are renewable plants. So, and we still have potentials for that. So, in terms of generation, we can diversify.
Okay, our first caller tonight is Adeogun, calling in from Kwara State. Hello, Adeogun.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, go right ahead.
God bless you, sir. The government has tried to invest in successful years. I could remember 3 years ago when President Buhari increased the fuel 2.5. We have been told to realize that the money accrued there will be used for projects. It's only part of it that was new. This advert effect on Nigeria. I think what the president supposed to do was put some things in place first for the sudden bit of the subsidy. It's funny advertisement Nigerians. Going by this, like, look at the governors. The federal government can try to Up till now, some state governors have not met the minimum wage. They are still paying percentage to workers. Paying percentage to their workers. This thing is having adverse effects. I think we should diversify our economy. Because the money that is being gone to this subsidy is in the hands of some few Nigerians. The great they want. What the president has done is to do for other ways that all Nigerians, irrespective of your culture, your age, enjoy the dividends of democracy.
All right.
Of democracy. Workers are suffering. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Adeogun from Kwara. Thank you. Well, let's keep the calls coming through. Yes, speaking of power generation and distribution, well, the president is thinking Nigerians should have access to power at a cheaper rate. And so that presupposes that there will be a drastic measure in that sector.
Yes.
Yes, you would have states now that can be players in the sector. Beyond that, we would also need a base. One of the biggest challenges that we have seen here is the question of a national grid, and some people had talked about doing away with the concept of national grid. And if I recall, this president, in the early days when he was running his campaign, that came into focus about national grid. So what are we looking at here now that he is promising more access at a cheaper rate?
Well, first of all, there is no developmental tempo, especially industrialization, which is the harbinger of solving so many social problems. Problems of unemployment, problems of inflation, problems of the value of the currency, problems of foreign exchange, so many problems. So the basis upon which we will be able to get it right is stability and optimum generation of electricity. And for us to succeed in that, we must be prepared to fight corruption first. We must be prepared to investigate what happens, and we must be prepared to deal with those culprits, the national saboteurs. We must be prepared to do that one first. Otherwise, no matter how rosy whatever programs you want to bring on board, so long you allow laissez-faire approach to governance, whereby people will do whatever they want, believing that ultimately when the matter ultimately gets to the court, once they get bail, it's synonymous to them getting
so
their freedom.
You're suggesting that for the huge resources that have gone into this sector,
Yes,
that have not produced the needed results,
as a deterrent to whatever new foundation you want to set,
should be held accountable.
Exactly.
It's that way.
Yes.
Okay, we'll return to that, but we have another caller, Awal, calling in from Kano. Hello, Awal. Awal from Kano.
Hello, good evening. Welcome. My name is Awal Ibrahim, and I'm calling from Kano. Having had all the conversation by our invitees, so to me, it's also important for the national government to understand and to make a very good appointment of a representative, so that we should not have a tautology toward what's happening in the previous administration. We have seen it clearly in the previous administration, whereby an education and journalist was being appointed as the Minister of Education, which was later has been confirmed by the ministry and the minister that they have failed. It's also important for this present administration to understand such scenario to avoid a tautology on that. And secondly, on the issue of the fuel subsidy, to me, at the macro level, it's also important. But at the national issue like this, even microeconomic should also be considered. Our situation now in Kano has gone very wrong in such a way that so many things have been escalated, prices, transportation. So if to consider only national economy or national or macroeconomy on a situation like this, how about the masses? So the government is meant for the people.
Yes.
Government has to look on some policies, not necessarily at a long time, but also at a short time. I have listened to what Professor said, that it came in a very wrong position, if I can recall what he said, that it needs to privatize in such a way that has to come in a partial condition, not necessary to remove everything at a point of time. So I think the national government should look at all those things and make a remedy toward it so that we Nigerians will enjoy the benefit of democracy. For the past 20 years, none of us can state or can raise a very good shoulder and say this is what government has did to Haiti in terms of democracy. It's all theory, but in the practical terms, it's very difficult to point a good item that you say this is what masses have benefit. So thank you all, and we enjoy your contributions. Good night.
Right, thank you very much, Awal. Thank you. So, back here in the studio, yes, we're talking about power generation and distribution. Nasser wants people to be held accountable for that. What do you say?
The thing is that I'm not so much an expert in that arena, but as Nasara said, it all boils down to corruption. If I can bring it down even to my line of oil industry. I've started saying something to you before. I think you called me up also. The thing is that if at all those monies that they claim, or maybe it is claimed that has been subsidizing petrol, is put even into the power generation or anything of such a nature, I am sure it will make a serious. I'm sure it will make a very serious impact in bringing this power to limelight, so to say.
So a lot of what you say is gone into subsidizing petrol, can be channeled to other. But again, as we said earlier on, we've heard these over years. And is President Tinubu the one who will now do it as he says? So yes, because first thing Nigerians will say is, we've heard it before.
I want to, so that we can take this subsidy thing. You know?
So is he? Yeah, so let me quote a line. I think one of his parting statements, he said that with full confidence in the abilities of Nigeria, I am confident that we are close. We are close to the reach, right? Because I am Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, it's important to understand the man that is the president. And why I'm saying this is because I've heard from the comments, both from the callers, that fear due to historical mistrust, especially when you remove subsidy or make a savings. The question is, would the leadership put it in the right place, right? But I want to argue that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is different. And what I'm going to say, I'm saying this because look at his antecedents. Look at what he did in Lagos. Look at the caliber of people he has worked with and how they've grown, right? These people he has worked with have grown because of their capacity. So what I am, this evening, one of the things I want to say, and because of our listening public, is that let's give this government a chance and let's support them and let us trust that these savings from the subsidy that has been removed before this administration will be channeled properly in a way that would benefit the people in the long run. And as a doctor, I want to play out the scenario. I want to, the scenario that is playing out, the subsidy and some of the hardship we're experiencing now, I believe that should be ways to mitigate it. But it's like a pregnant woman. You see, with a pregnant woman who has a child, right, that will bring joy upon birth, right, he would undergo some pains initially, right? But as doctors, we will not allow him or allow her go through that full pain. Sometimes we give an analgesic and all that. Those are the social intervention. But ultimately, you have to bear some of that pain with the hope that after 9 months, right, there is going to be a childbirth that will bring joy. So my plea to Nigerians is that please let us bear this momentary period of pain with the full confidence that we have a president who is able and capable to channel these saved resources to the betterment of Nigeria so that there will be joy tomorrow.
All right. Quickly, I'll just take this call from Gwagwalada. Yakubu calling in from Gwagwalada. Hello, Yakubu. Is Yakubu still on the line?
Hello. Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm on the line. Good evening, sir.
Go on.
My advice is to Ahmed Tinubu that he should be a president for all Nigerians, as he promised. That he should remember the minority in the distribution of amenities.
All right, Yakubu, that's good. He should be president of all Nigerians, and he should remember the minority in the distribution of amenities. That's it. That's your advice to the president. Okay, thank you. Right, thank you very much for calling in. Yes, back here in the studio. And somehow the discussion always comes back
that's the
to the question.
That's the elephant in the room.
Oh, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Well, Major Sarah, you were going to check
yes.
on this.
On this subsidy matter, initially I decided not to say anything, but I think I'm tickled to say something. There are 5 solutions to this problem. Number 1, government of President Bola Tinubu should investigate the quantum of money dispensed for refineries reactivation. Where have the money gone to? And hold whosoever is responsible there accountable. Because we took loans and said that these monies will be used to revamp our refineries. If we have refineries functioning, there will be little need for us to export our crude oil outside, for us to end up buying the crude something. We're losing about 23 different components from the crude oil. Losing gasoline, losing petroleum, losing aviation fuel, losing so many things. That is one. Secondly, government should deliberately issue license for establishment of modular refineries. At least we need nothing less than 500 to 5,000 modular refineries. If you go by the illegal refineries we are having in the shores of the Nigerian coastal areas, you understand, you will appreciate that Nigeria is not serious about issue of this refinery. Number 3, we should as much as possible fight oil theft, which the president said clearly in his speech, fighting of oil theft. Up to now, NNPC has not been able to explain to us how much barrel of oil do we have, how much do we have refined every day, how much do we have reserved, how much is being given as royalties, how much do we normally get as a result of oil theft, how much do we lose. Oh, we have not gotten this up to now. For 30 years, NNPC did not have audited accounts until during the period of President Buhari, when they now got it, and then they were compelled to put revenue into the national treasury. As it is now, how much is NNPC given as national revenue? So if they are not giving us any revenue, the President Bola Tinubu should consider applying the Abuja style. Abuja increased petroleum by only 4 naira. He established the Petroleum Trust Fund under President Buhari, then General Muhammadu Buhari. And everybody knew how much infrastructural entrenchment we got as a result of PTF. Therefore, establish something like PTF so that the reserve of all this money should be channeled towards direct infrastructural advancement for Nigeria. Apart from that, the government should try as much as possible to really check the records of our foreign crude refining outside. And then the government should, as much as possible, give NNPC targets. How much do we need? Rather than allowing them at their own whims and caprices to
say... It's a private company.
It's a private company, but who are the shareholders? Who are the shareholders? Nigerians want to know who are the shareholders of this, so that at the end we would know. The dividends, are they going to the common man, bearing in mind that sovereignty belongs to the people, or they are going to some crony people? We Nigerians need to know this.
So in one sentence, I want to also say, just one sentence, please, one advice I would advise this administration is why it's good to investigate those who have stolen and all that. Let's not be distracted, right? I like a comment by the current, by the president-elect. He will discourage corruption. I think that there's so much problems to solve, right? Than Mr. President.
Yes.
I think there's so much problems to solve than to be distracted chasing those who have stolen.
Okay.
I think the effort should be, how do you stop moving forward?
So, as they say proverbially, go ye all and all your sins are forgiven.
I don't think so.
I disagree with that.
I don't think so. I align with Dr. Nasra's position, but to the extent of it being administrative, it should not be the immediate focus. There is already an issue in the public space that needs the attention of the administration, 100%, as it were. But for me, I think, of course, I want to borrow the sudden death description from Prof. That description properly describes what we have now, and I adopt it. I think it's the appropriate thing to do, especially when you also understand the morbidity of the subsidy ecosystem. It's not a single factor driven ecosystem. As you are talking about pricing, you are talking about dollar factor, you are talking about price of crude oil factor, you are talking about the consumption indicator pack factor, or how many liters of PMS do we consume in Nigeria. In this country, I started counting it when it was 22 million. It's more than 60 million now, and within 16 years, So when you look at and that's why I'm using the word deliberately, morbidity, it's like death, it is confusing and everything. Yeah. So it is just better, and this is where I disagree with Dr. Minasura. Let government just remove its hand. Don't do any program. It is all this program that had even been confusing the public space. The assumption is that when you are not budgeting for it, it means that expected projected earnings will come into the budget and be done with other things rather than budget for subsidy.
What about the issue of theft? The president mentioned that.
Theft is another issue. It has nothing to do with subsidy. Theft has to do more with crude oil thefts.
Right.
Back in those days when we were using,
when we were using the pipelines,
when we were using the pipelines, to convey products, PPMC, there were vandalization of those pipelines, but not as huge as it is with the crude oil. But the important thing for me, let government just say there is no subsidy. We cannot pay for subsidy. I'm scared when we have to spend up to 96% of our revenue, on servicing our debts. And upon that, we are also borrowing to import. And upon that, we are using our little foreign reserve to buy again. And upon that, we are we are using our national feedstock.
But a lot of that has been explained as the result of corruption. So you don't want
corruption would always thrive when there is opportunity for arbitrage. Okay. Once you have that opportunity, there would be corruption. There's nothing you can do about it.
Thank you, Sir. I want to say a few things based on discussions we've been having, and then I will return to this. So the elephant in the room, and beginning with the fact that I started by saying initially that the president has said a few right things, and one of the things he has also said, which in my view is right, is that he has said that he doesn't intend to run a centralist government. You'll find that in the manifesto, a centralist government. So he believes in the devolution of powers. He believes in decentralizing. Okay, on the issue of power, for example, I'm sure he's going to implement part of what has already been signed into law. Giving states the power to also generate. So electricity will be decentralized. That's fine. He has also said he intends to privatize the NNPC. As you know today, NNPC is not privatized. NNPC is only commercialized. He asked the question. The owners are still the Ministry of Petroleum and the Ministry of Finance, 50-50%. So it's not yet in the hands of the private sector. And he also said something, privatizing through the exchange. It's only when you take part of NNPC to the exchange that you open up opportunities for Nigerians to own shares in NNPC, akin to what you have in other countries. So that's also fine. I want to also put on record that with respect to solid minerals, he also talked about empowering states. That states will be in a position now to control, the minerals within their regions. Again, you find that in the manifesto. And I hope he walks the talk with respect to these, promises. Now, on the issue of subsidy and on the issue of economic agenda generally, my advice to the president is that when he's getting an economic team, if he has an economic team where all of them are always unanimous with respect to a particular issue, they have unanimity of opinion, then that team is not a good economic team. The president, has to have a balanced view, okay? The pros and cons, and the cons. And then based on superior argument or even based on evidence, there has to be evidence, okay? Then the president can act, okay? I am in support of fuel subsidy removal. I want to make that point clear. For obvious reasons. Many of these reasons have been canvassed here. The fact that it's having huge, fiscal challenge, helping to widen our budget deficit. The fact that the opportunity cost is very high. This year alone, we budgeted just for 6 months, 3.36 trillion naira. Okay, so that money could have been put in some other productive sectors. Opportunity cost is high. The fact that we're even helping to also incentivize smuggling. Subsidizing fuel in some other neighboring countries, the fact that it's also encouraging corruption. There are also environmental issues, to talk about. So all these factors support the removal of oil subsidy, which I where I stand. My worry is, doing it with in one fell swoop. Now look at the immediate reaction. As I said earlier on, inflation rate will gallop. Inflation rate moved from 22.04 in March to 22.22 in April. So over time, we've been having this creeping inflation rate. Okay, it's coming in slowly. But the moment this one stays, it is going to gallop. And inflation rate gallops, poverty rate goes up, and output, GDP, is likely to drop. Because what will happen is that you now find people, a lot of Nigerians, adjusting their spending plans because of the fact that the bulk of their money is being spent on fuel. Take myself, for example. In the last few days, I know I've spent a huge proportion of my salary on fuel alone. If we had functional public transport, of course I will use rail, I will use mass transit, but these things are not there. So I have to use my car. You get the point I'm making.
Right.
So I am saying that even output will drop because there will be weak demand, okay? Because a lot of the money you have, much of it has gone into fuel. So the government has to be careful that this measure does not become counterproductive. The president wants to pull a lot of people out of poverty, okay? And he has said it here. He and I like that statement. I will govern but not rule over you. And in governing, in not ruling over us, okay, he should get balanced views and not just listen to one side, the side that is saying, jack this off immediately, let's all die.
Okay. I'd like us to return to one of the points made by a respondent in our last report, which bordered on education. There was also a mention of education. Of course, we know that particularly tertiary education has been in huge crises over the years. That's one aspect that one respondent commented about. Education, what goes in there. Yeah. And looking at the whole gamut of education, here is where you begin to develop the biggest and most important and critical of all the resources, the human resource. So what are our impressions about what this government would do in education? Let's begin with Dr. Ibrahim.
I think that first would be there is a need to reform the educational system, right? We need to, and this is something that is quite prominent in the manifesto of the current administration, to reform the educational system to make it relevant to the current society we live in, right? Our educational system, it's a little bit out of tune with current reality, right? We need to educate and prepare the young people to meet demands of today's market, right? And all that is not seen in the formal educational system. We need to also strengthen the informal educational system, the vocational training, right? Skills development, right? And this is something that the current administration has said that they will do. We also need to increase the funding for education, and not just, and this is one place I also want to talk about corruption, right? How do you increase funding for education and use that money efficiently and in a way that is transparent and is not stolen and is bringing about value? So I think that what is important is, first of all, walking the talk, right? We have the plans, right? Can we have that strong political will to reform our educational system, to make it relevant to today's labor market, right? Do we have that political will to put in additional resources, but also make sure that those funds are well utilized, right, to strengthen the educational system? And if we get it right, what we would see happen is that our educational system will be so attractive that people from various African countries and even some European countries will now come here to study, if not ICT, but to learn about some of our cultural studies, some of our religious studies, and some other peculiar, I would say, learnings, right, that are really specific to Nigeria, the nature of Nigeria. So we can do it, but we need the political will, right, to do it. And I believe that the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, if they continue the way they are going, showing strong leadership, right, doing what they say they will do, I think we'll get there.
All right. Okay, the against you do with education.
Oh, well, I think if we connect the renewed hope and the speech by the president, what will be coming is likely something near a student loan, for tertiary education. And I think it's proper. Going forward, back in the days, don't let me say I used to be an activist. I was a student union activist. And we resisted so much any mention, of school fee, of tuition. So much that over time, free tuition had actually been institutionalized in the federal institutions of higher learning. But again, the reality is that the population then cannot be compared to population now. either at the level of population of admission seekers or even the students that are eventually given admission. So the reality is that fee must go up.
Right.
And in mitigating that, there must be some form of intervention by the government, in form of loan. And that has been the best practices across the world, somewhat.
Well, in this sector,
I just want to remind him that back in the days, African people come to Nigerian universities to read.
Well, in this sector, we have one of our guests here who is writing it, and he has to come in at this point.
Thank you so much, Cyril. I think from the manifesto, what I gleaned from it, the president was talking about increasing funding for education from current 5% of the budget to 25% of the budget. And another interesting thing in that document, which he talked about, has to do with establishing LTIs, local training institutes. He says he intends to do that all across the federation. I think that's also good. But my advice here is this: it's not just about increasing funding. That has to also be done strategically, and by strategically I mean, in this country, emphasis tend to be on access, and that explains why you have this proliferation of tertiary institutions. I would advise that we put a halt to setting up new public tertiary institutions, for now, and then concentrate on giving more attention to existing ones as we speak. All the states governments have their universities. The federal government also has universities in all the states. So we should stop setting up public universities. As I said, the focus has been on access. That's why you have universities all over the place. And to an extent, quality. That is also what ASU has also always been struggling for, quality. But we have not paid attention to relevance. Three things are important here in education: access, quality, and relevance. And for me, one way we can achieve relevance is to identify what I call pillar courses. What are those courses that the government feels that are very critical to our national development, so that we don't have to be employing, having foreigners coming here to do those jobs. Just as we focus on STEM courses, we have pillar courses that the government can intentionally fund. That would be my advice.
Finally, gentlemen, as we're about rounding up, this one has to be it. Everything we've said here tonight would be of little or no import without this: the security of the land. It's been one of the biggest issues so far, and the president touched on it in his speech. What is the way going forward as we conclude this discussion? Security is key. Even after the inauguration, we keep hearing, we've been hearing of more and more cases of insecurity. Kidnappings going on. They are not letting up at all. The criminals are not giving up. So what would be the answer to this?
So I think that, and this is something I said, intelligence is important, right? We should move away from reactive to being proactive, right? We need to also bring in technology, because I would have said increase the number of security personnel, right? But there's a limit to which you can increase and also afford, right? But where you then bridge that gap is bringing in technology, improving on intelligence, and then obviously you need to increase your number of personnel and then train them adequately, motivate them by making sure that they are well paid, and some of the things that they need, like insurance cover, right, are there to keep them motivated. I think if we do this, and these are part of his manifesto of this administration, I believe they will keep it, I think we'll have better security.
Umar?
Yeah, I think in terms of security, I think we need to do more on community policing. The things that I hardly see a way of how we can be able to bring on-board personnel that will be sufficient for 217 million, especially now that we are running helter-skelter to do so many things. But in terms of community policing, maybe from the local, you report whatever you see, you report to the nearest person, maybe either the local district or whatsoever, and action should be taken without any fear or favor. In terms of, like now, as you said, the banditry, everything has still been going on, and those bandits, most of them are known. They know where they are. These camps are all, just name it. They are all known. They know them in person. They know where they are. They can name them. So I think something needs to be done as soon as possible in order to deter them from continuing what they are doing.
Well, the first fundamental advice is that the president should change his strategy drastically. You should take issues of intelligence very, very important. Let the NIA be the lead organization when you are talking about security. Let the NIA be the one to coordinate. Let the NIA be the one to go about, because they are the ones that can do it discreetly. Let the NIA be the one to be giving you security reports, on the basis of which you investigate all the investments in the security sector for the past 10 years. We have heard of the Tocanos, we have heard of the drones, we have heard of so many things without even a rat killed with those equipments. It is very, very important that national assets like that should be investigated, bearing in mind Section 14, subsection 2, that says security is the primary responsibility of governors. And then you should really rejig the judicature so that there will be penalty on all these criminals. Sections 230 to 304 of the Constitution should be amended to bring about anti-terrorism court. Criminalities like that should not be taken to regular courts. Otherwise, you will get the snail speed type of dispensation of justice, as a result of which justice delayed is justice denied. Right. So it is very, very important you take this matter seriously, amend the Constitution, bring anti-terrorism court so that you will be penalizing these ones, investigate all the investments in the security, and restructure the security forces with the NIA at the apex.
Right. One of the first places the president went to outside his office was the counter-terrorism center.
So, yeah, and he was quite impressed. And he inspired officers there. It's not as if we don't have. But I think there is a need to create a balance and sustain that balance, which we should have a good mix of internal policing, with the military, as it were. It would appear as if we are using more, of the military in internal domestic security situation. So one, we need to grow the policing system, and I think this was not part of the speech, but in the renewed hope document, it clearly talked about the police not being deployed for any sort of VIPs engagement, and that the civil defense would now be particularly deployed for VVIPs, so that you free capacity for the police to engage in internal policing activities. That is one. Then two, the counter-terrorism center, from the overview of what I had, snipers that I got, it's a modern-day intelligence gathering, high-capacity intelligence gathering platform that they have there. So it is how it is used. And the president had also said that it is no longer about increasing numbers, but training to capacity and enhancing the power, the empowerment of officers and officials. I think that's the most important thing. It's no longer about numbers now. We are seeing what Ukraine is doing with numbers against Russia, and it's about technology. So once you are able to upgrade your personnel at the level of trainings and technology, you are par.
And there's something else on security that is also in that document that has not been mentioned here. He talked about also encouraging modern livestock practices.
Yeah.
You know, that will also minimize these header farmers
at the level of
clashes.
the agriculture.
And maybe as a final word from my side, I want to advise the president to quickly constitute a fiscal and monetary policy coordinating committee, you know, to ensure that fiscal and monetary policies get harmonized.
So I want to also chip that we need to also prioritize health. You know, this is my sector. I need to.
Yes, of course.
So yes, I think it's something that the president has mentioned: strengthen the primary healthcare system, have a one health system, not just focusing on just infrastructure, but strengthening, making sure that the health workforce is well trained. We have the right tools. There is incentives to demand these services, and we also promote focus on health promotion, preventive health, and not just
preventive health.
on,
you spoke about that as well.
All right.
And so maybe all of this will bring down those high rates of
infant and child mortality and maternal mortality.
Well, time's caught up with us. And as I always say, no one program can take care of all the issues. And so we must leave this conversation here at this point and thank our guests so much for being part of this discussion. Nia Kinshiju, investment expert, always a delight to speak with you. Thank you for being here.
As always, thank you so much.
Dr. Obinna Ibirim, public health physician, political strategist, and public affairs analyst, also a delight all the time to have you join us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Let me also thank profusely Umar Baba Kanu, IPMAN National Secretary, giving us the, the in-depth analysis of what's happening, particularly in that area, and why we're going through what we're going through now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Nice being here.
Dr. Mainasara Umar Kogo, always a delight. Thank you, giving us all those insights into constitutional provisions, and we love that. It keeps us abreast of what the Constitution
in national unity and statesmanship, I start.
Right.
Thank
you so much. Professor Uche Waleke, well, we thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you so much.
And to you too, we say thank you very much for being part of this discussion. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Continue to stay safe.